In this video, I'll go over some of the basic quilting supplies that you'll need when working on the 6-inch blocks featured in this series. You can find this free supply list at learnhowtoquilt.com under quilting classes. If you'd like to learn how to draw up your own patterns, you'll need 1/4-inch graph paper and a sharp pencil for drafting. If you decide to make templates, you'll need template plastic and scissors for cutting paper. This 1/16-inch hole punch is optional. Make sure to buy 100% cotton fabric as it washes and wears well. The blocks in this series do not require much fabric. The largest piece you'll cut is a 6.5-inch square. If you buy 1/4 yard of a light, a medium, and a dark, you'll have more than enough to complete 6 to 9 blocks needed for a sampler quilt. I wouldn't purchase fabric for the borders or the backing or the batting until you're almost finished with your blocks. You might decide to try a different setting or choose to use your blocks for other projects. You'll find more information about fabric choice at the end of this video. Rotary cutters, rulers, and mats are popular quilting tools. If you're new to quilting, I recommend a mid-size mat, at least 12 by 18 inches. A good ruler to start with is a 6 by 12. Rotary cutter blades are very sharp, so you have to be vigilant about closing the blade when not in use. I like this cutter because the blade automatically recedes when not in use. It also feels good in my hand, and it has this locking feature where a child wouldn't be able to open the blade. I like to keep a small pair of scissors by my machine for clipping threads. I also use a larger pair of scissors for cutting strips. You'll want to pick a neutral color of thread, as it's not possible to match all the fabric in your quilt. There's many different types of thread available. Just stick to an all-purpose thread for now. A word of caution about this thread: often I get a student in class that comes with this quilting thread to use for patchwork. If it just says quilting on the thread, then that's actually thread for hand quilting. It's a little bit thicker and stiffer than regular thread, and it could cause problems if you put it in the bobbin of your machine. You want to steer away from that. The only problem about this quilting label is now the thread companies offer machine quilting thread, and that's okay to use. I rarely use pins, but when I do, I like these glass head pins because the heads won't melt if accidentally hit with the hot dry iron. To make the applique heart, you'll need a small piece of a lightweight, double-sided fusible. I'll talk more about this when we get to that block. Last but not least, you'll want a machine in good working order. It doesn't have to be fancy, just able to sew a straight stitch. Part of working on a sampler quilt is being able to experiment or try out different blocks and different fabric combinations. Choosing your fabric should be fun, but sometimes it can be overwhelming. Here are some guidelines that might make it easier for choosing fabric for these 6-inch blocks. Sticking with 3 fabrics, a light, medium, and dark, is easiest, but it might be boring after a few blocks. You can always add more fabric later on. Some folks like to use a focus or focal fabric as a guide for choosing the different fabrics in their quilt. I know the colors in this fabric look good together, so if I pick out fabric in those same colors or colors close to those, they should go together in my quilt squares. If you would like more information about this, check out our encyclopedia entries, focal fabric and/or focus fabric. Think about the sizes of the pieces in your block and the scale of the design on your fabric. I like these flower motifs and this vine running through. If I were cutting a piece this side, I'd lose most of that motif. Since these blocks are 6 inches, when you cut up these larger prints, you'll lose part of the design. You might want to look for smaller prints like these. Stripes and other directional fabric need special care when cutting, or they can look crooked in the block, which might also be okay if that's the look you're looking for. Most polka dot prints or designs with numbers or writing are also directional, so remember to be careful with these. You might want to check out all the pre-cuts on the market. Many fabric stores sell fat quarters. If you open this up, it would be 18 by 22 inches. I like the convenience of these because they're pre-cut, so that means no waiting in line for cutting, and they're small. When I gather them together, I get a better idea of how this fabric's going to look in my block, rather than just staring at big bolts of fabric. You can also purchase fat quarter bundles that have been curated with coordinating fabric. Now, I don't have any fat quarter bundles to share, but I do have these pre-cut layer cakes. They're 10-inch squares, and so they would be big enough to use. You can also buy pre-cut charm squares. These are 5 inches big. They wouldn't be large enough for this 6.5-inch square, but you could certainly use pieces of them in these blocks. Lately, I've been using this novelty fabric when trying out new blocks. I get to practice the block to see if I like it. Later, I use the block in an I Spy sampler quilt or as an I Spy scroll. I don't have to worry so much about matching as it's naturally wonky and scrappy. By the way, these I Spy scrolls and samplers make great baby gifts. Are you ready to get started? In the next video, you'll learn why the square and other rectangles are the easiest shapes to sew. Thanks for viewing our video. Please share it with your friends. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks.